Strike me, Jackie, I'm back on the air again.
Don't be the sword on the busman's face.
Hi-ho, everybody. Three voices out of a multitude of performers, famous and forgotten, most native-born, some adopted by this friendly southern land, all of them part of fair Dinkum variety. Hello there, this is John West bringing you the voices of 100 of Australia's greatest variety stars, taken off gramophone records from as far back as we've been able to find them. Fittingly, the first voice is the greatest of all. Roy Reen was born Harry van der Sluis, son of an Adelaide cigar manufacturer. As a youngster, he was Boy Roy the boy soprano. As a young man, he journeyed to New Zealand to perform on the Fuller circuit. In 18 months, he had found himself as a performer, after evolving his characteristic makeup, a whitened face with the jet-black painted moustache and beard of the Hebrew comic. Back in Australia, he was soon ready to team up with Nat Phillips, and in July 1916 at the Princess Theatre, Sydney, the pair wrote a new page of theatrical history as Stiffy and Mo.
Well, there we are, boys. It's back from sea, eh?
On shore again and glad to be out of that boat.
Yes. Ship ahoy!
2 ships ahoy. We've just returned from sea, across the raging main, and now we're home from sea, we won't go back again. The sea is funny enough to see, it is twixt you and me, with the ups and downs, downs and ups, no more sea for me. We've been aboard a pirate ship, we've just given the captain slip, and being in touch with both of them, back to the raging sea. We've been aboard a pirate ship, we've just given the captain slip, and being in touch with both of them, back to the raging sea. Back on land. Well, I'm going down to the old pub to see the girl down there, then I'm going to get me pay. But remember, while I'm away, you have no drink.
No drink, that's the main thing.
Going to be any booze, I'm going to be in it.
Their 10 years as a team were not placid, nor unmarked by separations, but they created in the public mind an indelible, perhaps I should say, an indelibly blue impression. Subtlety had no place in the variety theatre of those days, but it is unlikely that Stiffy and Mo were as vulgar as legend suggests. And their material did not lack satirical, topical comment. Witness the reference to Premier Jack Lang of New South Wales in this parody of Ukulele Lady.
A eucalyptus baby, give me plenty pork and Irish stew.
Right, sir, I now have a eucalyptus baby.
Well, I'll see what Mr. Lang can do. Would you like a eucalyptus baby? A eucalyptus baby like a you? Yes, I like a eucalyptus baby, providing that it's not a Jew. Would you nurse a eucalyptus baby? You never know what it might do. If you'd like a eucalyptus baby, I'll see what Mr. Lang can do.
The serious songs of bygone days have an unenviable task. They have to pass through the filter of today's sophistication. The greatest difficulty is to hear them with ears unashamed of sentimentality. And yet audiences who relish the knockabout vulgarity of vaudeville comics also relish the sad and sentimental ballad of loss or mother love.
There's no silver lining in any cloud like the silver in my mother's hair. Nothing so precious in all the world, nothing with it will compare. I've seen the dewdrop upon the rose, I've seen the lily so fair, but nothing I see is as dear to as the silver in my mother's hair.
That was Vince Courtney, who appeared in many shows, often singing songs of his own composition. The suburbs knew him as well as the city, for in those days, the suburbs had their theatres too, and the theatres had their comics. Ward Lear, Harry Sadler, Porky Kearns, Les Shipp, Ted Tutty, and Sid Beck.
Does an elephant love peanuts? Does he? Does a goldfish love a bowl? Does an ostrich love to stand while his head down in a sand pile? Does a hot dog love a roll with mustard on? Now does a bumblebee love honey? Does he? Does an oyster love a stew? When it comes to table manners, does a monkey love bananas? If he does, then baby, I love you. I am a gay caballero. I'm back again from Janeiro. And you bet your life I'll be dodging the wife and the husband who chewed off my hero. While coming here on the steamer, I met a beautiful dreamer. Each kiss that I got, her lipstick left a spot, and the captain thought I had eczema. Eczema, not eczema. What do you think eczema is? You can add in spot. Yes, right. Now, last night I strolled on the plaza. The music was playing some jazza. Then I heard a noise, it was made by some boys. By gosh, I was getting the razzer. She took me to her home to nestle. Her room was as big as a castle. I said, why so much space? Then she said, in case you get fresh, I need room to wrestle.
The faithful audiences who came to the stalls of vaudeville also came to the galleries of the plays, sometimes to the melodramas of Bland Holt or Alfred Dampier or Charles Holloway, always to the innumerable revivals of Sweet Nell of Old Drury. Sweet Nell was played by a Sweet Nell too. Nellie Stewart was born in Woolloomooloo, Sydney in November 1858 of theatrical parents. A star at 22, she remained a star for half a century. She played Sweet Nell on and off for 25 years. She was a very great lady.
Oranges who'll buy my oranges? Here you. Will you buy an orange?
Perhaps. What are they worth?
All I can get.
No doubt. And what is that?
All you will give.
You answer sharply, Nell.
Would you have me blunt?
I'll try again.
Now say a shilling for an orange, won't you? Come on, say. I doubt you only seek to plague me. Why do you keep company with yonder rakes?
Why not?
You have to honest the face.
Yet I warrant you they are both of them the king's friends.
Most likely. But all England knows what company he keeps.
And that?
The worst in London.
A sharp tongue indeed. Have you a lover, Nell?
A lover? Not I. I'd be hanged first.
But someone loves you, Nell.
Loves me. Loves Nell Gwynn. Me name a byword. And me dower, a basket of oranges. Why, what's there to love in me? And what is love but folly?
Sweet Nell even had the distinction in 1911 of being transferred to the cinema screen. Australia was making films, and feature films at that, before Hollywood was founded. In 1914, the First World War brought a great upsurge to the Australian theatre, and also brought in its wake a number of all-digger concert parties who created a precedent for the Kiwis of the Second World War and made a career of the professional stage. One of the most famous of those post-1918 companies was headed by GP, or was called Pat, Hanna.
Let us read in the Gospel according to cricket. Lo, it came to pass in all the creation of cricket, the children of Aussie prevailed over all other creatures. They conquered the Kiwis, they walloped the West Indianians and the Hindustanis, yea, and the South Africancians, and they smote the hosts of the Britons. They returned unto their own land rejoicing and calling out in a loud voice, Gettest thou an eyeful even of the sacred ashes? Is she any good? Lo, all these things came to pass in the days of one Donald, who was the son of Bradman. It came to pass in the first year of the crowning of the second good Queen Bess. The children of Ozzy called out in great anguish, Thou, O Sir Donald, gettest thou an eyeful even of this test team which the three wise selectors, even the three blind mice, have sent forth to save the sacred ashes?
What a lot of leading ladies have vied for affection on the musical stage. Florence Young, Carrie Moore, Dorothy Brunton, Minnie Love, Maud Fane, Elsie Prince, Josie Melville. Let all these well-loved favourites be represented by Australia's greatest native-born musical comedy star, Gladys Moncrief. Talent sometimes bursts out in one favoured individual, but in a theatre the odds are that a number of members of the one family will all become favourites of the footlights. The Pollards of the 1880s are just one example. Remember too, 3 generations of Wallaces, the Kelloways, the Dancing McLeans and the Blewitts. Fred Blewett was a star before the 20th century began, and of his children, Gus was seen in a whole string of musical comedies until his early death in 1936, and Kitty is well known today overseas. Old Fred, big, bluff and hearty, made a few records in the old days.
All for the ladies, all for the girls, all for the dainty darlings dressed their golden curls. You're here and I'm here to kiss their tears away, and love them all the day, and let them have their way. All for the ladies, we part our golden hair, and polish up our teeth as white as pearl. Ah, girls, you ought to be very grateful when you come to think of the wonderful things that's been done for you. Take the animals. Why was the rabbit created? To make you beautiful sealskin coats. And the nanny goat was made that you should have kid gloves. And the silkworm was made so that you should have beautiful silken camisoles. And then another worm was invented, the poor man, so that he should pay for them. Then take the swan, for instance, the poor old swan. He was made so that you should have beautiful powder puffs, so that your dear little noses won't go shiny. There's many a swan who's going around without a waistcoat through the same thing. Then take the bargain sales, oh, the bargain sales, all for the ladies, all the dainty little thingamies and the whatnots, and the how-do-we-goes with dainty bows and furbelows and rows of heaven's knows. What's the use, for it never shows, unless you stand on your head and clap your toes. But let a man dare to poke his nose amongst the hose and the dainty clothes, and the shop girl blushing like a rose will say, don't put your hands on those. Don't mess the goods about in the bargain basement. They're all for the ladies, all for the girls.
Some of the great legitimate singers were not strangers to the variety stage. Harold Williams and Sidney Birchall, for instance, and of course Peter Dawson, who was not only J.P. McCall, songwriter, but also Hector Grant, Scottish comedian, as well as Dawson, the ballad singer.
Well, There's a track winding back to an old-fashioned shack along the road to Gundagai, where the blue gums are growing and the marambit is flowing beneath that sunny sky, where my daddy and mother are waiting for me, and the part of my childhood once more I will see. Then no more will I roam when I'm heading right home along the road.
Variety acts come in all shapes and sizes. Everything from a family of acrobats or trick cyclists down to one lonely, hopeful performer in a spotlight. Perhaps for company, in part, the double act was and is one of the most popular of all. Dinks and Onkus, Dinks Patterson and George Wallace, Cy Meredith and Maudie Stewart, the Musical Max and many, many more. Sometimes it was the Brothers This or the Something Sisters, whose birth certificates told a different story. For variation, there was Clem Dorr and Eric Edgley, who were in fact brothers, part of a large theatrical family. Here is Clem Dorr, alone for once.
Life's a blessing in disguise, that's what the wise men tell. If my old girl's a blessing, she's disguised it very well. I know one day I'll get real vexed and give her such a smack. Still I couldn't strike a woman, and besides she might strike back. So what can I do when Sue stands 6 feet 2? I'm black and blue, but what can I do? What can I do on only Irish stew that tastes like glue? What can I do? When I see her first husband's photograph, I know what he went through. I sit alone and moan on his tombstone. I'm number 2, but what can I do?
Variety has always been a resilient form of theatre, but the Great Depression knocked it hard. In 1931, the husband and wife team Mike Connors and Queenie Poole, with great courage at that time, began giving cheap price variety to audiences hungry for fun, or just plain hungry. Within a few months, the policy of low prices and Australian talent was paying off handsomely. Mike and Queenie had re-established variety on a firm footing. Later in life, Mike, an American by birth, commanded a huge radio following with his breakfast time sessions. He recorded this song with his old-time partner, Freddie Witt, with whom he made his Australian debut in 1916.
A little garden for the rose, and they called it Dixieland. They built a summer breeze just to keep the snow far away from Dixieland. They built the finest place I've known when they built our home sweet home. Nothing much so gotten in the land of cotton from the clover to the honeycomb. And then they took an angel from the sky and they gave her heart to me. She had a little bit of heaven in her eyes, just as blue as the blue can be. They put some fine spring chickens in our land. Taught my mama how to use a frying pan. They made it twice as nice as paradise, and they called it Dixieland.
In the early days of radio, Englishman Rupert Hazel did a lot of broadcasting in Australia. Hazel, with his partner Elsie Day, was well known in the vaudeville programs of the 20s. And here's a skit he recorded about 3LO Melbourne. Before it was the ABC, of course.
3LO Melbourne, we are now crossing over to the Moonshine Valley Racecourse, where the race for the Phillips Stakes will be described by Shotgun, the sporting editor of the Church Times. 3LO Melbourne, speaking from the Moonshine Valley Racecourse. The horses are at the barrier for the Phillips Stakes. Standing his plane up. He's thrown his jockey. I think the jockey's dead. I knew the horse was. The weather is beautifully fine for midsummer in Melbourne. A cold sleet is blowing into the stand. This is a very exciting race. Coming up the straight, Jaundice, Grand Mash and Anthrax are racing neck and neck. Jaundice will win. No, Grand Mash got up just in time. Grand Mash won, Jaundice second, and Anthrax third. The judges' placings are Deformed first, Toothache second, and Airbag third. I knew I wasn't far out. The winner's prize, judging from its appearance, is about 1 8 3LO Melbourne. We have had numerous complaints about interruption by Morse. We cannot, of course, entirely eliminate this, so the studio orchestra will play something that fits in.
Well, that's it. If you can't lick 'em, join 'em. Those Morse sounds bring back some memories to veteran Melbourne listeners. About the time that Ribbert Hazel made that record, a graceful dancing duo was delighting Australian audiences, Madge Elliott and Cyril Ritchard. Later, as husband and wife, they had distinguished careers in the legitimate theatre. And today, Cyril Ritchard is one of Broadway's top actor-directors.
Whatever became of old Hazard? I hear he departed this life after using harsh words like old bag and buzzard, describing the governor's wife. I remember Monroe in the PAVO. He was tallish and mentally dim. That talk of heredity can't be quite true. He was dropped on his head by his ayah at 2. I presume that by now he'll have reached GHQ. Yes, I'm sure that's what happened to him.
The male impersonator has had a firm place in theatrical history since the days of the English music hall. Two of England's most famous male impersonators, Hetty King and Ella Shields, became favourites in Australia too. And here's another artist who was also a first-rate pantomime principal boy, Nellie Colley.
Just tell them you're a Londoner, just an ordinary little Londoner. You don't come from the West End job, you're as good as anybody in the West End mob. Your mother, she was a Londoner, proud of a tiny boy. When they ask you where you come from, tell them you were born somewhere in the old Kent Road. Tell them you're a Londoner, just an ordinary little Londoner. You don't come from the West End job, as good as anybody in the West End mob. Your mother, she was a Londoner, proud of a tiny abode. When they ask you where you come from, tell them you were born somewhere in the old Kent Road.
When the famous team of Stiffy and Moe was finally broken beyond repair by Nat Phillips' death in June 1932, Roy Reane continued his career as a star solo comic. His genius needed no male partner, but he did need a female partner as a feed, and he found her in his own wife, Sadie, herself born to the theatre and daughter of the old-time comic Sam Gale. Roy himself said of Sadie Gale, she has polish, finish, and finesse.
Well, darling, the last day of our honeymoon, love.
Yes, dear.
Have you enjoyed yourself?
Yes, dear.
You feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
We've had a wonderful time, haven't we?
Yes.
Back to the bush today, love.
Yes, dear.
Back to the cactus.
Yes.
Back to me job timber cutting. I'm just dying to get a sword in my hand, love, and leave you at home in the house, listening to all the little birds chirruping in the trees.
Yes, dear.
Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
When you get back home, love, you'll be able to show all the girls all the pretty things you bought. You'll be able to show that beautiful first stable you got on.
Yes, dear, real skunk.
Hey?
Real skunk.
Yeah, I can smell it from here. What are you shaking it for?
I'm going to get a few mothballs for us.
Mothballs? My God, you want cannonballs to kill everything of that? Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
Do you like the hotel I brought you to?
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's a wonderful hotel. And isn't the boss, Mr. McCackey, a fine fellow?
A gentleman.
I think Mr. McCackey is one of nature's own gentlemen. Now, I'll go and see Mr. McCackey and ask him for the bill, dear, see? And we'll go upstairs and pack up as we can get the first train. Feel all right, lovey?
Yes, thank you, dear.
Don't undo that sash around your waist, darling. You're liable to fall in the heat.
But what of the theatre outside the capital cities? Bringing something of the glamour and excitement of the big smoke to the outback were the tent shows, which travelled up and down the length and breadth of Australia in days when transport was much more difficult than now. There were shows like Barton's Follies, Mac's, Cole's Varieties, the Great Levant, and circuses like Perry's, Worth's, Bullen's and Soul's. One tent variety show that still takes to the road every year is Sawley's. It's still run by Mrs. Grace Sawley and the comedian Bobby LeBrun. But it takes its name from its founder, George Sawley, a mellow singer of sentimental songs, as well as an all-round showman.
It's just an old-fashioned locket and a code that frames an old-fashioned photo of a girl. If she were only here today, the little curlets tucked away of golden hair, so young and fair, would now be silver gray. There is an old-fashioned sweetness in her face that makes her picture seem to me a priceless pearl. For many long and empty years, I've shed a lot of lonely tears upon this old-fashioned locket and a curl.
In the early days of radio in Australia, community singing enjoyed a great vogue. It was often conducted by entertainers like Charlie Lawrence and Jack Lumsden.
We are now commencing the test of 1932. The lion versus the kangaroo. Members of the kangaroo team train on Australia's national food, the hops, who called us a lot of flounders, while the visitors' staple diet is plum and sardines. The umpires are now out inspecting the wickets, the view being completely obliterated with their hats. The players take the field where to goodness knows, and the first blow is struck to earn the ashes. Woodfull is so wide awake, he's never at a loss, and people sometimes wonder how he always wins the toss. But one hard head who knows him was heard to softly speak, I've seen him playing two up, he can head 'em for a week. When Tate begins to bowl, the batsmen tremble at the knees. The ball comes humming down the pitch just like a hive of bees. The other day the bails went flying right out to the gate. The batsman smiled a sickly smile and whispered, Tate, ah, Tate. So this is cricket. Gee, it's a wonderful game.
In the 30s, Jim Davidson and the ABC Dance Band were well known. They often played in live broadcasts for the entire Saturday night program. Here's how they sounded. We have with us in the studio Mabel from Snake Gully. Say hello, Mabel.
Hello, everybody.
How's about singing this song for us?
Oh, I'd like to do that.
Fine.
Everybody around the place will dance to it. It's gonna set the pace, so friends, do it. It's a slifter, body lifter, the Snake Gully swagger. Every tramp along the road will sway to it. Farmers help to load their drays to it. Even our bows and their tabos do the snake golly swagger. All the pigs in the pen, the roosters and the hens are doing it now. The ducks and the drakes are doing shimmy shakes. Why, even Sally, our champion cow, grab your partner round the waist and go to it. With every step you take, you'll glow to it. It's a spry dance, dinky die dance, the snake golly swagger.
Among Australia's comedians, two names stand out predominantly as the greatest this country has produced. One is Roy Reen and the other, George Wallace. George was one Australian stage comedian who also made a success of films. He made a string of money-making movies in the 30s and 40s for FT Thring and Cinesound. He was a riot on radio too, and even just before his death, he was still convulsing theatre patrons with characterizations like Sophie, the sort on the bus.
The other day, a mob of them got in the bus, and I said, that's funny, men carrying a camel. And it wasn't, it was a dog. The biggest dog you have ever seen in your life. So they walked across the bus and sat down on a seat, the man and the dog. I was aghast. I was aghast. I walked over in a ladylike way and I said, look, I said, look. You can't have a dog in the bus under the new award. You can't have it. And this bloke said, but my sweet little thing, and I said, sarcasm won't get you anywhere. You know, I'm a girl who likes refinement and culture and music. I always try to act like a lady, speak like a lady, and to do and to say the things that the lady would do. Always be the perfect lady. I'm having a stink with a sailor in a fish shop the other night. She's frying a bit of mullet, a knifey bit with the gills in. And one word led to another and she let go through it, see? Now, I don't know if you've ever been smacked in the mouth with a bit of mullet. With the gills in. But it's an nauseating experience. And it's an each-way bet because you don't know out of which gill the fat's going to squirt first. But I retained my dignity, breathing without... I said, fiddly-dee. French. And went to sweep regally out of the fish shop. But some galah had left half for Frankfurt on them. Now I skidded on that, bashed the base of my skull on the iron railing of the counter. My right hand went in the batter vat. And I finished up in a mangled heap on the floor, unconscious on a bag of prawns. Fishing purposes, 8 bob a pound, on the nose. This is where my mad Latin lover comes into the story. Ginger Ferguson. There's a nice animal for you. Ginger Ferguson. I was laying down unconscious in a coma on the ground. When I came out of it, Ginger's holding me up looking straight in my face with his one good eye. Then he asked me to go out there. Well, you know, girls, when they first asked you to go out, you feel as silly as a duck. You don't know what to say. I said, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I can't make me wind up. And I'm dying to go out there all the way, you know.
And that's one of the deathless creations of the Australian stage. George Wallace as Sophie, the sort on the bus. George Wallace had a half-sister who made an independent reputation as a comedian, particularly as that troublesome child, Babe Scott. And let's not forget that one of the most prolific recording artists in Australia was a cowboy, whose records still sell very well, Tex Morton.
Here she comes, boys. Be ready to take her on the fly. Woo! Oh, the hobos are all heading northward, for summertime nearly is done. So So just like the rich and the wealthy, we're traveling round with the sun. We'll be in the north for the winter, up in the sunshine again. I got my guitar and my blankets, you see, so all I want now is a train. Oh, I'm gonna travel by train, out of the wind and the rain. It's no use you talking to me about walking, 'cause I'm gonna travel by train.
In the field of comedy recordings, Ward Leopold has made a series of sketches over the years that have enjoyed great popularity, the Here's Hooey series. One of the best was the Jubilee Year edition.
Wacko, the digestive tablet that makes everything you eat taste like something else.
We are now canning to Crossborough for the Celebi jubilation.
The weather is perfect except for a few scattered showers in Persia. It is a glorious day in Canberra, the climate here having been imported from Melbourne for the occasion. This is the moment the whole nation has been waiting for, the official welcome by loyal Australian citizens to the royal representatives of the British throne. There is an amazing array of clothes here today. Everybody who's anybody is wearing clothes in this nationwide broadcast.
Nothing of the kind. What I said was, we are cronning to Caspera for the...
Ah, yes, there is Lady Blacksby and her pearls, causing quite a sensation. The royal couple are now moving out onto the dais before the huge crowd. The concourse is literally black with people, white people, of course. And now, with magnificently controlled calm, the Australian delegate, chosen from 25,000 others by secret ballot, starts the long walk to the royal dais. There's an expectant hush, and the delegate now is at the foot of the dais. And now, through the person of this one voice, Australia is about to speak an historic greeting. How are you, mate?
Continuing our symphony hour, we present a composition by Tim Tussey entitled Air for Trumpet.
That's all for now, folks. Just write in for your free pair of spare ears and be listening next Jubilee.
Jack Davey was a vocalist when he first came to Sydney from Auckland, New Zealand in 1932. Singing and songwriting remained a passion with him, despite his great success as a quizmaster and comedian. Here are two examples of his own compositions.
There's no more room now in our air raid shelter. There's Aunt and Gran and Dad and Mom and me. And when the sirens sound, we all run helter-skelter. Just Aunt and Gran and Dad and Mom and me. Of course it isn't very big, and it isn't very long, and it isn't very deep, and it isn't very strong. So if a bomb drops, take a quick look up at heaven for Aunt and Gran and Dad and Mom and me. Got a yen for Gwen, and I've had it since gosh knows when. She's a baby that stops, and just everything stops when I get a yen for Gwen. I used to think Kate was great, but whenever we had a date, I'd be spending my dough, and the answer was no, so I shut the gate on Kate. Now Sadie's a lady, Nell is so swell, and Ruby's the gem of them all. Netta is better, but no one can get her, 'cause she's got so much on the ball. So I'll keep my yen for Gwen. She hasn't got much, but then what little she's got, she just gives me the lot. And she's the kind of dame that sets your heart aflame. Gwen's got a yen for men, but then I've got a yen for Gwen.
During the Second World War, one of the big soap companies turned from soap opera to variety and created a radio unit that starred all the biggest names from the Australian stage. One of its funniest teams was made up of two homely spinsters. Yes, those two old-fashioned girls, Ada and Elsie.
Else, the gramophone company want us to do a modern number.
Oh, they don't so too.
Yes, they do so too. They say we're too old-fashioned.
Well, I don't see there's any difference between us and those ultra-modern girls.
Neither do I. Except they go out with the Johnnies and we stay home with the Willies. Get your note. We'll swing it if we swing for it.
You called me baby doll a year ago. Itchy-coo, itchy-coo, itchy-coo. You said that I was very nice to know.
Oh, no, wait a minute, Elsie. You went wrong.
Well, you put me off. Your nose keeps twitching.
I can't help it. I had rabbit for lunch. Start again and put in a couple of boops and a dupe or two.
You called me baby doll a year ago. Itchy-coo, itchy-coo, itchy-coo. You said that I was very nice to know.
Elsie, you're breathing very bad.
Turn your head away.
You told me what love was. I thought I knew skiddly-dee, but then I found that all I learned was how to love you, raggedy-coo. You said that you would love me in return.
Waggle your head, Else.
Don't say that you were fooling after all.
I said your head.
But now you've gone away, you'll be sorry someday, dirty dog. You left behind a broken doll of the R.O.K.E. and old boop-a-doop.
Well, that's giving them hot tickety if you like. How do you think it sounded?
Lousy. It's not the way Molly Roberts gets the men in when she sings a song.
Well, what's she got that we haven't got?
Can't think of a thing. But she does sing a song as though she means it.
And she certainly means it. Oh, we're back numbers, Elsie.
I wonder if it meant anything.
What?
Those silverfish coming out of my hope chest.
Perhaps they've given up hoping too. Oh, I'd just love to be married and have a provider and 3 or 4 kids of my own.
I'd rather have 3 or 4 providers of my own and a kid.
Oh, Elsie, that's
why don't you marry Mr. Hopkins?
Oh, no, Elsie's too old. He'd never last out in my trousseau.
He likes you, though, doesn't he?
I don't know. I asked him the other day. I said, Mr. Hopkins, I can't figure out if you're a gentleman or I just don't appeal to you.
Oh, wait, you've never.
Did so.
Not straight out.
Did so, too. He's a bit stingy, though, Else.
That's what I thought.
Keeps a pound note folded so long King George gets ingrowing whiskers. Oh, Else, if we only had a bit of pep like Molly Roberts.
Well, as I said before, Aid, what's Molly Roberts got what I haven't got?
Nothing, but you've had it longer. Get your note.
You said that you would love me in return.
Have you been eating onions again?
Don't say that you were fooling after all.
Tiddly-om-pom, skiddly-iddly-dee.
But now you've gone
Elsie. Oh, dear, I've forgotten the words.
Someday, well, why don't you concentrate?
I do. And then you breathe on my face, and that's all I can remember.
Dorothy Foster and Rita Paunceford were, of course, established performers long before they were metamorphosed into Ada and Elsie. But radio has had its share in discovering and developing talent, too. One graduate of wireless variety was a girl who went on to considerable success in England, Joy Nichols.
When a boy from Alabama meets a girl from Gundagai, winter turns into spring and the birds start to sing a sweet lullaby. When the boy from Alabama tells the girl from Gundagai that, believe it or not, he sure likes her a lot, a silver linings in the sky. Pretty soon they're strolling out together, a new day has begun. Life is just a bunch of sunny weather, and troubles like bubbles go one by one. When a boy from Alabama meets a girl from Gundagai, all the world is in tune, and a sweet honeymoon will happen in the by.
There were a number of comedians who mastered the craft of radio comedy in the war years. One was George Blackshaw, and yet another went on to massive successes in Take It From Here. From crooner and violinist to Ron Glum is the journey made by Dick Bentley.
In the porch my girl is wise, puts the light out by surprise, 'cause she says it hurts her eyes. Well, that's psychology. Through a romance on a boat, my girl's got me by the throat. She's demanding a fur coat. Well, that's psychology. And when we're in the park, oh, it's getting dark, then she tells me there's no place like home. Wouldn't it? Though she could have pushed a pram. Well, now she's working on a tram and getting big dough like a man. Please, that's psychology. That's psychology. That's psychology. Or is it?
And whom haven't we yet had time to mention? Well, myriads of performers. Bert Bailey, for instance. He was famous as a pantomime dame, as well as for his performance as Dad in On Our Selection. And while we're on panto, let's not forget those other fine dames. Arthur Stigant, New Zealander Joe Brennan, and Aussie Jim Gerald, who, as Lieutenant Colonel Gerald, organised army entertainment units during World War II. One acquisition to Australia during the war years was an American who was billed as the last of the hillbillies, Bob Dyer.
Howdy, folks, howdy. I guess you people have heard hillbilly singers and hillbilly musicians of every rank, but you've never heard one as rank as me. I've got a song I want to sing for you folks now. It's an awful sad song. It's called The Death of Willie. Oh, it's a sad song. The way I sing the darn thing, it's pitiful. Anyway, it's called The Death of Willie, and if Willie don't die, darn him, George and the boys will kill him. What do you say, boys? You all set now? Here we go. Get together and bear down. A one and a two and the tootly ensemble cantabile. Let her flicker. He's gone from us forever, our darling blue-haired boy, our cockeyed darling we will see no more. He gently passed away on the 93rd of May. He never died so suddenly before. We know that he was a-dying by the freckles on his breath. His eyeballs was dragging in the mud. The doctor said the only way to save Willie's life was stop the circulation of the blood. Play it, boys.
Many Australians became popular on records. Johnny Wade with his Hawaiian songs, Barbara James singing with her husband Reg Lewis at the piano, and the bands of Leo White and George Trevere. There was also the traditional jazz of Graham Bell. Before the impact of television hit the radio stations, one of the most popular audience participation comedy programs on the fair Dinkum ether was George Sassafras Foster's Bunkhouse Show.
I have eaten so many sausages, my dear Lucy, that I think I am getting indigestion.
Aha! He's suffering from acid indigestion. Do you suffer from acid indigestion? You do? Then stop drinking acid. Drink, Prepso, Burpso. The only drink that fizzes twice before you drink it and once afterwards.
Lucy, darling, do you think it's quite right for me to be with you tonight? After all, your husband is out of town.
I know. That's because he's a commercial traveler.
Yes, he sells Pip Pip, the famous headache powder. Remember the name, folks? Pip Pip, spelled backwards, Pip Pip.
What time are you expecting your husband home, Lucy?
Not until late, Cedric.
Then come close, my darling. Let me look at you. Oh, you look gorgeous this evening.
He must be taking someone's vitamin pills. But a word, ladies. The reason she looks gorgeous is because she's wearing a cutie foundation garment. Girls, are you putting up a good front? Or has inflation passed you by? Buy your cutie garment tomorrow, sold everywhere, complete with bicycle pumps.
There have been many Australians in variety who've had success overseas. Some indeed went on to greater fame in England and America than in Australia. Names like Albert Whelan, Nona Wynne and Leon Errol meant more away from Australia than in the country of their birth. One robust music hall star who became Queen of the Isle of Man was born Florence Flanagan in a hotel in Fitzroy, Melbourne, kept by her parents. When she went on the stage at the turn of the century, she took her stepfather's surname and went on to fame as Florrie Ford.
Flanagan, take me to the Isle of Man again. Take me where the folks all cry, hey, double L-Y, Flanagan, Flanagan, if you love your Mary Ann. Oh, Flanagan, take me to the Isle of Man.
Florrie Ford made almost her whole career overseas, but some Australian artists have gone away, returned home to success, and gone away again. A recent example is Rolf Harris.
Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down.
Keep me cockatoo cool, curl. Keep me cockatoo cool. Don't go acting the fool, curl. Just keep me cockatoo cool. All together now.
Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down.
Singers of Western-style songs have always been popular, especially in the country districts, and especially when they've written songs with an Australian flavour. Smilin' Billy Blinkhorn, Johnny Ashcroft, Frank Ifield, they're all examples, and so is Slim Dusty.
It's lonesome away from your kindred and all, by the campfire at night, where the wild dingoes call. But there's nothing so lonesome, morbid or drear, than to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer. Now the publican's anxious for the quota to come, and there's a faraway look on the face of the bum. The maid's gone all cranky and the cook's acting queer. Oh, what a terrible place is a pub with no beer. Then the stockman rides up with his dry, dusty throat. He breasts up to the bar and pulls a wad from his coat. But the smile on his face quickly turns to a sneer as the barman says sadly, the pub's got no beer. Then the swaggy comes in, smothered in dust and flies. He throws down his roll and rubs the sweat from his eyes. But when he is told, he says, "What's this I hear? I've trudged 50 flamin' miles to a pub with no beer."
The days of the great Australian comics who drew their laughs from the Australian scene, like Moe and George Wallace, Jim Gerald, the Blewitts and Sid Beck, seem to be over. But comedy remains. The fashion alters, but the art of making people laugh goes on. Television fosters laugh makers like Bobby Lim and Buster Fidesz, and the slicker, more American approach is exemplified by Joe Martin, an Englishman now settled in Australia.
Fantastic cowboy stories. I remember one cowboy story. It's the funniest cowboy story you ever did hear. Never got a laugh, but I like doing it because it gets plenty of character. This is the story of the Pony Express. This guy, he was a Pony Express rider. You see, he used to ride a horse. The idea was that this Pony Express rider had to get through to the fort with the mail. And he sat on his old mail bags, and off he went to the fort. And he's going along there, and all of a sudden he ran smack right into the middle of an Indian ambush. And he got 3 javelins right in the middle of the comic cuts. Whack, whack, whack. And the blood was pouring out of him, but as I say, he was a Pony Express rider, and the mill he went on through. And he's still going along there. And all of a sudden he ran straight into another Indian ambush, and he got a tomahawk right in the middle of his head. By this time he's suffering from a split personality. But the mill kept on going through. He was a member of Equity and Financial, and he's still going on there. And the blood's pouring. He ran into another ambush, and this time another axe and a javelin in the back, in the front, where he got the message, the lot. And eventually, with the blood pouring out of him, he's dying on his horse. He gets to the fort. He hammers on the door. The commander opened the fort door and said, "Yes, what is it?" He said, "No mail today."
Well, that's one aspect of comedy today. Not less funny or less good, but different. Nevertheless, to me, the epitome of fair dinkum variety is contained in the talents and extravagances of comics like George Wallace or Moe.
You know, McKicky, there's so much beer here tonight, you're liable to finish up drunk under the table.
Lasho! How dare you? How dare you have the colossal presumption to assume that I will finish up a victim to the hops, in the grip of the grape, as it were. And even if you think of such a thing, how dare you speak it out loud in front of all these charming people here? By gathering tonight, we have some of the most distinguished metho drinkers in the town. And you stand there with your tongue hanging over your tie, and dare to place me in the same catechism as Bumbo, Bertie, and Metho Moore. Lasho, as I look into your pink eyes, I think you've got albino blood in your veins. I told you only lately, yes, you have nice skin. And I've come to the conclusion I know how you've got it. You've been using blood and bone complex. Lasho, I feel sorry for your parents. No wonder they abandoned you on the doorstep of a Chinese just house. Honest, they must have thought you were a bundle of dirty laundry. It pains me to have to speak thus this wise to you, Lasho. Especially, who are you looking at, Holmes? I said it pains me not to speak to you on such a salubrious occasion. I'll repeat that word, ignorance. Salubrious. But your violent insinuation has cut me to the quick. Finish up. Drunk under the table, indeed. I'll pass out in the fowl house like I always do.
And there you have it. Fair Dinkum Variety, a program produced by Charles Graham and narrated by John West. We dug out these old records to remind you of 50 years of Australian entertainment. Jim McLeod played the discs, and to sign off the program, we can hardly do better than...
This is Jack Davies saying, as usual, good night, and thanks for listening.
All right, mate, all right. I'll see you again.
That was a special light entertainment feature written by Charles Graham and John West. The recordings used included some from the ABC's Historical Records Library and a number of rare Australian discs kindly lent by private collectors.